Hey guys, it's Rogan Rami. For one of my ideas, I was going to start reading to you guys. So I'm gonna read Alice in Zombieland. And the back says, when little Alice follows the black rat down into the gaping darkness of an open grave, she falls and falls, and soon finds herself in an undead nightmare of rotting flesh and insanity. Venturing further into this land of zombies and monsters, she encounters characters both creepy and madcap along the way. But there is something else troubling poor Alice. Her skin is rotting and her hair is falling out. She is cold, and she has the haunting feeling that if she remains in Zombieland any longer, she might never leave. Can Alice escape Zombieland before the dead Red Queen catches up to her? And the front has a picture of pretty much a zombie Mad Hatter and like a dying Alice. Like you can see like the cut on her head and such. And there's like the creepy, I guess that's supposed to be a rat that she follows. Oh no, that's the March Hare. And down here is the little rat that she's supposed to have followed. So let's get started. Chapter 1, Down the Dead Hole. That's a picture of a rat in a waistcoat. Kind of like the bunny, like the white rabbit. It has like the watch and everything. Alice was beginning to get very tired of sitting by her sister on the bank, and of having nothing to do. Her sister had seemed very displeased about having to accompany her against her will down to the graveyard that sprawled adjacent to their home. The graveyard, her favorite place to play, was all tangled gray vines and tilting ancient tombstones, bearing names she'd never heard before, though she supposed they must be family, in some distant past before she had been born. Alice loved to stroll through the graveyard, to pick the funeral flowers from old grassy knolls where someone dead most certainly must lie beneath. For her, there was always adventure in a graveyard. Despite her sister's nasty disposition, it would have been a perfectly cloudy, chilly day in her favorite play place had she not been so hungry, for her sister had refused to have tea before angrily bringing Alice outside. Tea and a sandwich would have been nice, perhaps a nice meat pie. If the cook had been bothered to bake one up. For the cook made the best pies in the world, and Alice could think of no better meal than a delicious hot meat pie. As if being ravenous wasn't enough, now her sister was also refusing her the joy of pursuing the ancient stones, and had hold of her arm while she read such dull material. Once or twice she had peeped into the book her sister was reading, but it had no pictures or conversations in it. And what is the use of a book, thought Alice, without pictures or conversation? So she was considering in her own mind, as well as she could, for the chill of the bleak day made her feel very sleepy and stupid, whether the pleasure of making a daisy chain would be worth the trouble of getting up and picking the daisies, when suddenly a sleek black rat with shining dark eyes ran straight from a nearby tomb and quite close by her. There was nothing so very remarkable in that, nor did Alice think it was so very out of the way to hear the black rat say to itself, oh dear, I shall be late." When she thought it over afterwards, it occurred to her that she ought to have wondered at this, but at the same time it seemed quite natural. But when the black rat actually took a watch out of his waistcoat pocket and looked at it, and then hurried on, Alice broke from her sister's grip and started to her feet. For it flashed across her mind that she had never seen a rat with either a waistcoat pocket or a watch to take out of it, and, burning with curiosity, she ran across the graveyard after it, despite her sister's angry yells for her to come straight back to her this instant, and fortunately was just in time to see it pop down into a gaping open grave. Clods of gray dirt sat all around its edge, and a displeasing smell seemed to waft up from it. For a moment, Alice stood beside the grave, her sister's voice far away and still frightening for all the distance, deciding whether she dared to jump in after the strange black rat. In another moment, down went Alice after it, hardly considering how in the world she was to get out again. Then she was tumbling forward into the stinking black grave, which went straight on like a tunnel for some way, and then dipped suddenly down, so suddenly that Alice had not a moment to think about stopping herself before she found herself falling down and down. On the way down, she hit her head upon the leaning tombstone, and tears filled her eyes for a moment as she tumbled forward. Either the grave was very deep, or she fell very slowly, for she had plenty of time as she went down to look about her and to wonder what was going to happen next. First, she checked the smarting place on her head and pulled back a small hand coated with bright red blood. Her head hurt quite a bit, but as there was nothing to do but cry or get along with her adventure, she chose to stifle her tears and smile through the pain bravely. Then she tried to look down and make out what was coming too, but it was too dark to see anything. When she looked at the sides of the deep, deep grave, and noticed that they were filled with strange and frightening things, in some places she could see rotting bones poking from the dark soil, in others skulls leering at her as she fell by them, missing teeth giving silent voice, perhaps, to warn her back from what lay at the bottom of the grave. It made her feel quite out of sorts to see such emblems of death sitting so close next to her. Well, thought Alice to herself, after such a fall as this, I shall think nothing of tumbling downstairs. How brave they'll all think me at home. Why, I wouldn't say anything about it, even if I fell off the top of the house, which was very likely true. Down, down, down. Would the fall never come to an end? I wonder how many miles I've fallen by this time, she said aloud. I must be getting somewhere near the center of the earth. Let me see. What would be 4,000 miles down, I think, for you? For, you see, Alice had learned several things of this sort in her lessons in the schoolroom, and though this was not a very good opportunity for showing off her knowledge, as there was no one to listen to her, still it was good practice to say it over. Yes, that's about the right distance. But then, I wonder what latitude or longitude I've got to. Alice had no idea what latitude was, or longitude either, but thought they were nice grand words to say. Presently, she began again. I wonder if I shall fall right through the center of earth. How funny it seemed to come out among the people that walk there with their heads downward. The antipathies, I think. She was rather glad there was no one listening this time, as it didn't sound at all the right word. But I shall have to ask them what the name of the country is, you know. Please, ma'am, is this New Zealand or Australia? And she tried to curtsy as she spoke. Fancy curtsying as you're falling through the air. Do you think you can manage it? And what an ignorant little girl. She'll thank me for asking. No, it'll never do to ask. Perhaps I shall see it written up somewhere. Down, down, down. The pain in her head had turned into a deep throb, but she continued to ignore it and held in her tears some more. There was nothing else to do, so Alice soon began talking again. Dinah'll miss me very much tonight, I should think. Dinah was the cat. I hope they'll remember her saucer of milk at tea time. Dinah, my dear, I wish you were down here with me. There are no mice in the air, I'm afraid, but you might catch a bat, and that's very like a mouse. But do cats eat bats, I wonder? And here Alice began to get rather sleepy, and went on saying to herself in a dreamy sort of way, Do cats eat bats? Do cats eat bats? And sometimes, do bats eat cats? For you see, she couldn't answer either question. It didn't much matter which way she put it. She felt that she was dozing off, and she began to dream that she was walking hand in hand with Dinah, and saying to her very earnestly, Now, Dinah, tell me the truth. Did you ever eat a bat? When suddenly, thump, thump, down she came upon a heap of cold, sodden earth that smelt of dead things. Nasty, pale worms wreathed throughout the small hill, and she hastily threw herself from the dirt, wincing in disgust. Worms and beetles crawled through the sodden earth, clicking and grubbing along at her feet. Was this what a grave was like inside, she wondered? She'd often wondered how the darkness had gotten along without the light of the sun, how things lived. Now she had a better idea of how the things that lived without the light get along. Alice's head still ached, but she decided to ignore it, and she looked up. But it was all dark overhead. Before her was another long passage, and the black rat was still in sight, hurrying down it. And I think I'm going to stop there. So we are on page 11. And she just saw the black rat scurrying down a passageway. So I'm going to mark my spot. And I'll pick up there when I read next. I hope you guys liked the beginning of the story.